and welcome to the program. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Charles Moscowitz here, Monday through Friday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. here at all of my live stream affiliates, YouTube and others. And we're joined by Paul Curry. Paul is a contributing columnist with townhall.com. He wrote a column that came to my attention, which is for Democratic leaders. It wasn't about COVID-19 then, and it's not about BLM now. Paul, thanks for joining me today. Paul, you have a good overview on the situation this year, this long year, and the crisis at hand, namely the COVID-19 virus and the recent killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, which was, of course, a horrendous event, but the aftermath and what's happened in terms of the looting of black businesses, the burning of black buildings, the killing of black people by these thugs. And now the increase in crime predominantly hitting black people in big cities like Chicago and St. Louis, which is the aftermath of this. But I want to get into how the Democratic Party is quite predictably responding to these crises. So let's start there. What is your overview on that, Paul? Hmm. Very situational, but I mean, more fundamentally, I mean, just think about how diabolical this is. I mean, the charges that you're making, the fact that they would shut down an economy, hurt people, hurt employment, particularly among minorities, destroy people's pensions and savings, increase the federal budget by trillions of dollars to put more people, to give more people money so that they can deal with the horrendous dislocation of being shut down, damage people's lives. I mean, possibly kill people. I mean, by, shutting down access to medical care and forcing people to stay inside where they might, there's been an increase in domestic abuse and depression and all of the social ills that come with such a draconian policy. And they would do all of this just to stop Trump from being reelected, just to stop the Republicans from holding on to Congress or gaining Congress. I mean, this is like, it's almost satanic that they would do this on such a national level. I mean, the colossal evil of this, never alone the stupidity of it, is just absolutely astounding. And I entirely agree with that analysis. I think you're absolutely right. And then they have we have the situation with where George Floyd is killed as a heart attack at the hands of a cop, a terrible incident recorded on video in a very blue state, I may say, and in a city that prided itself on police regulation and reform going back many decades. You had their district attorney at the time, Amy Klobuchar, let this person off the hook, this cop, after he had already killed another person and after he had something like 20 violations against him. Then she runs for president. You have, and yet somehow this was almost as if it were planned, an opportunity to bring out a lot of the same motley protesters that hit the streets the day Trump took office, in the form of the women's movement, the Pussy Hat movement. Now it has a combination of that and all of these other constellations of left-wing intersectionalist groups like BLM and Antifa and all of their street thugs who then go on a rampage destroying black neighborhoods, burning down black businesses, looting black businesses, killing black people. And somehow we're to look at this and say, look at Trump, the evil Trump is at fault. How do they figure that? I mean, do you think American people are going to put that strange and circuitous equation to a test or not? Right, the bonus army. Mm-hmm. Well, the you mentioned Facebook and Twitter and the social network, and I say this with respect to them because, after all, they're allowing me to host this program. However, I think it's safe to say that they're censoring conservative opinion, or they're trying to, even to the degree that they censored President Trump's criticism of Antifa, claiming somehow it was anti-Semitic, which is absolutely preposterous. And yet they won't mention, Biden's segregationist past and his statements about these things and whatnot. So, they definitely are trying to put their thumb on the scale in terms of helping liberals. And I think that they do have that kind of power and coordination to do that, and that's troubling. Now, you mentioned, I think accurately, that the idea of shutting everything down and wearing the mask, these became political symbols. You see Biden and the rest of them always with the mask on now. And it's more than just a symbol. It's a symbol of submission, really. And yet, once the George Floyd incident occurred, which again was a terrible tragedy and a terrible crime, they found it perfectly appropriate to launch these well-coordinated attacks on black neighborhoods, assuming that would cause them political advantage. And we saw thousands of people hitting the streets, many without the masks, all close together, everybody. And I don't know if this is going to lead to any spread of the disease. There is actually some evidence that it might, but yet that was excused. And now that seems to be petering down, and President Trump wants to have his rallies. Oh my God! I mean, this is like he's killing people. He's breathing on people. I mean, this is back to the lockdown. So, I hope people see how fake and how situational their approach is here. No, absolutely. No, and I think that in fact, they don't even admit that Antifa exists, and they're basically calling it nothing but a street fair. And there's some very troubling elements to that occupation. That's the kind of thing that can lead to that's subversive. I mean, that could lead to a civil war. You're going to see, and this is maybe an unproven prediction on my part, but I think we're going to see them start to try to get recognition as a sovereign state, and they're going to start to go talk to the United Nations, and they're going to hook up with Native Americans and try to agitate for them to do this. And it's a real open and I think eventually more manifest attempt to subvert this country. Right. Well, of course it'll never happen, but yeah, that doesn't mean that they won't agitate for it. And I think they're trying to goad President Trump into getting involved federally, because that's exactly what they want to see happen. That's where they'll get, they'll be able to really nationalize their issues, and they'll get their images of, black people being taken away, and all of that stuff. And I mean, I hope he doesn't do that. If he does, I mean, it certainly has been done before. I mean, Dwight Eisenhower did it in Little Rock to desegregate the high school, and Kennedy did it in Birmingham, and we could look at other examples. And ultimately, that may be necessary, but I hope not. And I think that it can be diffused in a sense by just either ignoring them or starving them out. Right. That's right. They all kind of got tired of these. In that case, it was a lot of college pension kids. And who knows? I don't know who's populating this one. But getting on to the election right now, when I look at the Drudge Report, which has become very depressing, I don't know what's happened to the Drudge Report. I don't know if they've been captured by the same people that run the New York Times. It looks like they have. But they run very dire predictions of Trump being down by 11 percentage points. And apparently Fox News did a poll where he was down by 8. I mean, this, I on one hand, I don't think so. I think they said the same thing about Hillary Clinton, that she was up that much. But at the same time, it does make you wonder. I mean, it makes you nervous. What say you, Paul? I agree with that, and I think that Biden is not generating much enthusiasm. He's barely left his basement, and even when he does, and I think that Reince Priebus actually said it best when he said the best way for Trump to defeat Biden is to get him to come out and talk, get him to debate, put him into like 6 debates, because the longer he talks and the more he's out there, the more ridiculous he looks. I mean, putting aside the fact that he's a little bit beyond his prime, and I mean I want to say this gently, but he doesn't appear to be as cognizant or as cognitive as we want a president to be. Even when he is, it's not. He's never really clicked with people. He's always been kind of this strange outlier, and some of his shenanigans with women is not exactly attractive, especially these videos making the rounds. They have become, in a sense, embedded into people's thinking about him. You know, when he's like moving in on young girls and that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not saying he did anything beyond, you know, what absolutely is inappropriate but illegal, but it looks weird, and it's not exactly something that's going to help him. And yet he's big with women. He's got a lot of women supporting him. I think that this whole BLM thing and the Black Lives Matter is an attempt, and it's so predictable, for them to galvanize and solidify the black and minority vote against Trump. And I don't think that's going to work as well as they thought. It certainly will work to a degree, but I actually think that President Trump is going to peel away a few percentage points on the black community, and that's all he needs. You know, he's not. I mean, he immediately came up with police reform and signed an executive order, the first one ever signed. You know, I mean, he's, you know, there's a lot of metrics that indicate otherwise. I mean, particularly more among black men than women. He seems to have picked up a lot of support. And I think that he's going to do better with minorities this election than he did last. What do you think? Yes. Exactly, and all he has to do is peel off a couple of percentage points to really shift it over. And, you know, I do think that he's in a position to do that. I mean, I noticed that there were more black candidates for the Congress this year on the Republican side than on the Democratic side. I'd like to see the Republican National Committee and the Republican Campaign Committee support them a bit more. They haven't done that, and that's a shame. That's a lost opportunity. But can you imagine how interesting and exciting it would be to see, you know, all of these, you know, black candidates, many of whom are veterans and even first-time office, would-be first-time office holders, win their elections and enter Congress? I mean, that would be a major, if not seismic, shift in this community. And that's the thing that I think the liberal Democrats fear most. That's right. Yeah, I mean, what they've done is no. I mean, all they do. I mean, they've offered the black community two things historically: abortion and welfare, both of which are very negative and destructive. And now all they offer is microaggression. I mean, they look under the microscope at anyone who doesn't, you know, is genuflect to the left, and they say, "Oh, let's see. In 1953, you were seen in a hotel with Strom Thurmond. You know, you were a racist." I mean, you know, this kind of real nasty attacks on people's integrity and destroying people based on, you know, like they might have imagined something racist in 1982. You know, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that flies with most Americans. I think they see that for what it is, which is a form of tyranny. Yeah. I mean, he wasn't just a he wasn't just a leader of the KKK. He was a Kliegel. In other words, he actually went out and recruited people into the KKK. And he was Hillary Clinton's mentor. He was a big Democrat right up until the day he died, and he was in Congress. I think he died in the 90s. And, yeah, I mean, but the thing is, we're not going to get that paid attention to. And, I mean, I think that President Trump does a brilliant job of doing an end run around this with his Twitter account. I mean, I'm just hoping that they don't completely censor that. Yeah, we could drive that home. Oh, to me, that's one of these moments of education about what, generally speaking, the left view, how they view race. Anybody that doesn't genuflect to their view is somehow not really black if you're black, or racist if you're not black. And yeah, it's such an ignorant and actually genuinely racist view of people that I think we need to really drive that home. Not to mention the fact that Biden has a history as a segregationist. That's how he ran for the Senate, from a southern state, I may say, or border state, that being Delaware. And that even recently, he'd never heard of Juneteenth. I mean, he's not, I mean, I don't know where he's going to get, he'll certainly obviously get the black establishment, just like he's going to get the Jewish establishment. And I'm speaking here as a Jew. I mean, they'll vote for the yellow dog Democrats. They'll vote for the yellow dog if it's a Democrat. They're just establishment, institutional thinkers. But he could shave off a few points, then we can see major change. And I think Trump will do that. No, I think you're right, but I think it's going to be ugly, and it's not going to be it's going to be a very bumpy 4 months. Who knows what they're going to pull next? They've already pulled the race card. They've already pulled, the pandemic. Who? I mean, I don't know how. I mean, how much lower can they go? I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Mm. No, I think that's a good point. I mean, don't forget, Biden's been in office since 1976. We're talking, 50 years almost. I mean, it's isn't done a damn thing. He's, just cruised along, and it's it does have a look like that. You mentioned Reagan versus Mondale. I think it might look more like Nixon versus McGovern. If the left takes over the Democrat Party, and you have the Squad and AOC wanting to defund police, and big Green Deal, and all of this, it could be a generational thing. I mean, the Nixon McGovern election resulted in Republicans controlling the government right up through till Reagan, and right up through till to Clinton, and Clinton was a pretty conservative Democrat too. So that's what I think we could be looking at. Although I hate to think, they might pull an impeachment card like with Nixon. I don't know, but that wouldn't at all surprise me. But if I think that if the Republicans take back the House, and that would be incredible, and I think it is possible, then that will be over also. Yeah. Well, I mean, they cheapened it to the degree that it became so obviously political and nothing. It was just like it was almost a parliamentarian thing. I mean, it didn't even, it just people were just glad it was over with, and they cheapened actually the significance of it, which is it's kind of a compromise of our constitutional exercise. Anyway, Paul, but what are you working on now? Wonderful. Boy, is there ever. Well, let's stay in touch and let me know how the book is going. We should do some more programming. And your column, meanwhile, is carried by townhall.com. Paul Curry, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. All right. Thanks a lot, Paul.